There we go. Really quickly, does anyone know who these two men are? Show of hands. A few others. Okay. All right. So we're going to move it pretty quickly because it's a lot less funny that you don't. If you don't already know, this is a band called Daft Punk. If you know who this band is, then at least you get to learn about charters and charter amendments. And if you already know about charter amendments, at least you get to learn about some good music. For those of you that don't know, Daft Punk is a French electronic music duo formed in 1993 in Paris by Thomas Bangalter and Guy Manuel de Homem Cristo. They achieved popularity in the late 1990s as part of the French house movement, combining music, funk, disco, techno, rock, and synth pop. They're regarded as one of the most influential acts in music and dance history. Sadly, the duo parted ways in February 2021. And why am I bringing up Daft Punk? If you know one of their signature songs, how do I get it to play? Charter. Okay, just going back once. It's charter, better, faster, stronger. Okay, please everyone keep the roar to a minimum. This is going to be my presentation today. This is my title slide. And I'm going to move into show of hands. Who here is from a city that has a city charter? Okay, so most of you have a charter. Who here is from a city that does not have a city charter? Okay, so a couple of y'all. I've divided the presentation into two parts. Adopting a charter if you don't already have one, and amending a charter if you do. All right. What is a charter and why would you want one? Think of a charter as a constitution of your city. They are interpreted broadly and as a whole. As a reminder, I used to do some employment law, so I find this case particularly interesting. Is Hammond versus City of Dallas. It's a 1986 case. It's a civil service case involving the termination of some police officers in a civil service jurisdiction. There was a question about the city charter and who had the final authority, whether it was the police chief or the city manager to fire these officers. The court looked at the city's charter. And when the court looked at it, they said they must interpret a city charter by reading it as a whole and harmonizing its various provisions as far as possible. Continuing on, what is a charter and why would you want one? A court will presume a city charter provision is valid and courts will not interfere unless the provision is unreasonable or arbitrary, amounting to a clear abuse of municipal discretion. For those of you paying close attention, this is the same case Joseph cited in his presentation, Brookside Village versus Como. However, I will note that if a charter provision attempts to regulate a subject matter that is preempted by state law, the charter provision is unenforceable to the extent that it conflicts with state law. All right, home rule versus the Dillon rule. How many of you heard of home rule cities versus general law cities? Okay, yes. Charles, you specifically helped me with that, so I'm glad I saw your hand go up. FYI, I did a little research and learned that the idea of home rule cities is fairly common across the United States. Some use it as the Dillon rule is their only rule, and some use it on a case-by-case basis. So just to tell you a little bit between the two, a home rule city is a city that may act in a way that is authorized by its charter so long as it is not prohibited by state or federal law. The opposite is true of general law cities. A general law city must find its authority to act from state law. And general law cities are said to go by the Dillon rule. What is the Dillon rule? The Dillon rule is the principle that local government exercises 1, powers expressly granted by the state, 2, powers necessarily and fairly implied from the grant of power, and 3, powers crucial to the existence of local government. The Dillon rule is named after the Iowa Supreme Court Justice John F. Dillon and is based on a municipal philosophy he expressed in an 1868 case, a long time ago. I'm not going to go through that in the interest of time. Later in 1907, it was reiterated by the U.S. Supreme Court and became a guiding principle for governments around the country. All right, what does the Texas Constitution say? The Texas Constitution, Article 11, XI, for those of you who speak Roman, Section 4 says cities and towns of populations of 5,000 or less. That's the important part here for charters, 5,000 or more, 5,000 or less. If you have 5,000 or less, cities and towns having a population of 5,000 or less may be chartered alone by general law. So they must look for state law to act. The opposite is true, as I said, of cities over 5,000 if you choose to adopt a charter. According to the Texas Constitution, cities having more than 5,000 inhabitants may, by majority vote of qualified voters of said city, at an election held for that purpose, adopt or amend their charters. So like I mentioned, the main consideration is your population size, 5,000 or more, 5,000 or less. One thing I want to point out here as I'm trying to move quickly, the census does not necessarily control the determination for the purposes of adopting a home rule charter. You'd think it might. How should we count people? Not going to go through this case, but I was thinking about it. Absent proof of fraud, bad faith, abuse of discretion, the governing body's ascertainment of the number of inhabitants in their city is presumed valid. There is this one case, State versus City of LaPorte, where they actually made a conscious attempt to manipulate the number of inhabitants. Please don't do that. All right, so what happens if you adopt a charter when your city has 5,000 inhabitants and then you drop below 5,000? Does all of your work go out the window? No, it does not. So don't worry about that. Cities may still amend their charters by a majority vote of qualified voters of said city in an election held for that purpose. While the basics of whether or not a city may become a home rule city and adopt a charter is addressed in Article 11 of the Texas Constitution, the rules regarding home rule cities are codified in Texas Local Government Code Chapter 9. So you think you're ready for a charter. How does your city go about adopting its first charter? First, you'll need a charter commission, and there are 4 ways in which it's selected. 1, the city council may select the charter commission. 2, it could be selected at a mass meeting. Please don't ask me what that is. Number 3, they could be appointed by the mayor. Or number 4, again, not going to read through all that, but they could be selected by the voters at an election. There's also some ways that voters, if they are over a certain percentage, can get issues put onto the ballot just by themselves. When it goes to the voters, if they want to choose a commission, it must consist of at least 15 members and not more than 1 member for each of the 3,000 population over that. So just keep that in mind. Approval by the voters of the proposed charter. Once the initial charter commission has completed a draft charter, the proposed charter must be submitted to the city's voters. There are specific dates involved, and I'll give another note on that in a few minutes. But before the 30th day, before the date of the election, the governing body of the municipality shall order the municipal clerk of the municipal secretary, or the municipal secretary to mail a copy of the proposed charter to each registered voter of the municipality. So it's not a fast or easy or cheap process. All right, so since most of you already have a charter in place, next is charter amendments, part 2. All right, doth your city have a bottle of this on thy shelf? Naturally, as attorneys, we do sometimes go to stores like Specs and Total Wine. I saw this on the shelf the other day. If so, talketh about a charter commission your city should. All right, if you want to amend your charter, can you amend your charter? Yes, you can, but it cannot be amended more than every 2 years. For some cities, that's going to be more of an issue than others. Just wanted you to be aware it's out there. Also, if you put out charter amendments and none of them pass, the 2-year timeline goes away. Who can submit charter amendments? The city council on its own motion can do it, or a charter commission can recommend amendments subject to the city council approval. Also, last but not as common, is the citizens can do it in a petition signed by at least 5% of the inhabitants. Proper notice for charter amendments. They must be published in a newspaper of general circulation. Keep that in mind. And what must be published in the newspaper? 1, it must include a substantial copy of the proposed amendment. 2, it must include an estimate of the anticipated fiscal impact. And 3, it must be published on the same day in each of 2 consecutive weeks, occurring before the 14th day before the date of election. Again, as with all things governmental, lots of dates to keep track of. Moving on real quick, some amendments to consider. Here in Stafford, we actually have a charter commission going right now, and we're working on some new amendments. And these come from some of their ideas and some that I've asked from colleagues. Things like making significant changes to your form of government. Obviously, that's something you would want to amend. While you're in there, if you're already calling for that sort of election, you've already gone through the process, you may want to clean up grammatical errors and numbering errors, remove outdated language. Some even want to add gender-neutral language. And sometimes address issues regarding council votes that have become apparent since the charter was adopted or last changed. As I mentioned earlier, a note on election timing. For all items which must be brought before the voters, the Texas Local Government Code includes a detailed timeline. The general purpose of the timeline is to keep the process moving as quickly as possible. However, the statute also recognizes that specific timeline given may not be possible or practical given a particular situation. And last but very not least, I'm rushing this up, our climate charters. Has anyone ever heard of a climate charter? No, probably not. This is a new addition as of September 1st, 2023. It's defined in Texas Local Government Code section 9.0015. A climate charter means a provision or charter amendment establishing a comprehensive rule or policy statement that purports to address climate change or the municipal environmental impact, including water, energy use, and air pollution. Basically, the legislature has said it needs anything involving these areas needs to go through them first, and once they approve it, then your city can add it. And that's it. That's about as quickly as I can move through charters and charter amendments.